Welcome to True Echo, where stories aren't just told, they resonate. Today's tale is one of courage in the face of corruption, unity born from unexpected allies, and a small-town showdown that will leave you stunned. What happens when a black diner owner stands up for justice and a notorious biker gang stands up for her? This isn't just a story, it's a reckoning. Stay with us to the end. You won't believe how it all unfolds. The morning sun peeked through the thin curtains of Alicia Bennett's modest bedroom, casting golden slivers onto her worn wooden floor. She hadn't slept much. Her mind spun all night with numbers, unpaid bills, overdue taxes, and the looming fear of losing the diner her father built from nothing. Her father, James Bennett, was now bedridden after a devastating stroke, and the place he once filled with laughter and the scent of sizzling bacon now echoed with silence. Red Valley wasn't what it used to be. Once a bustling blue-collar town with a thriving steel mill, it had withered into a place people passed through but never stayed. Alicia had left for Atlanta years ago, built a career as a nurse, and found a small slice of independence. But that midnight call, the one that changed everything, had pulled her back. Her father needed her. The diner needed her. And now, so did the values he taught her: compassion, resilience, and standing up for what's right. The bell over the diner door jingled as she unlocked it. 3 regulars shuffled in, their smiles forced but polite. She plastered on her own smile, took their orders, and retreated to the kitchen, the hiss of eggs on the grill masking her thoughts. Outside, the street was quiet. Half the storefronts were boarded up, and the ones that weren't had for lease signs collecting dust. Alicia sometimes wondered what she was really fighting for. Was it hope, or was it just habit? But that morning, everything changed. The low growl of a Harley-Davidson broke the silence. It was a sound so alien in Red Valley, it felt almost cinematic. Alicia peeked through the window, heart tightening as a tall man dismounted his bike. His presence alone sent a ripple of unease through the diner. Broad-shouldered, tattooed, leather-clad, he was unmistakably a Hell's Angel. The whispers started immediately. Mrs. Dorothy Watson clutched her granddaughter tighter. Dave Hill nudged his wife Sarah, eyes flicking nervously toward the newcomer as he pushed open the door. Alicia's breath hitched when he entered. He moved slowly, respectfully, avoiding eye contact, and sat at the furthest booth from the others. "Good morning," she said, forcing her nerves into submission. She brought him a glass of water. "What can I get you today?" "Black coffee. Strong. And something hot and quick. Been riding all night." As she walked back to the kitchen, she noticed the hospital band half hidden under his sleeve. His hands trembled. There was sorrow in his eyes, the kind Alicia recognized from too many nights in emergency rooms, grief trying desperately to wear the mask of strength. When she returned with his coffee and toast, she gently asked, "Are you all right?" He hesitated, his eyes scanning her face as if searching for judgment. Finding none, he nodded slowly. "My daughter, Emily. She's at Riverside. Terminal cancer. I'm just trying to stay strong." Alicia's heart broke. She sat beside him briefly, her voice a soft balm. "You're doing the best you can. Just being there, that's everything." But the fragile calm shattered when the door slammed open again. Sheriff Kyle Brennan entered, boots echoing loudly on the tile, with his loyal deputy Tyler Collins in tow. Brennan's sharp eyes landed on Marcus like a hawk spotting prey. "Well, well," Brennan sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Didn't think Red Valley would attract your kind." Marcus didn't flinch. Just sipped his coffee. Alicia stood between them, her voice steady but firm. "He's a customer, Sheriff. That's all." But Brennan wasn't here for facts. He was here for control. "You really think he's just here for eggs and coffee?" "He hasn't done anything wrong," she said, this time louder. The room held its breath. Brennan stepped closer to Marcus. "I've dealt with your type before, drugs, gangs, trouble. And I've dealt with your type too," Marcus said calmly. "But today I'm just a father grabbing breakfast before visiting his daughter in the hospital." Alicia turned to Brennan, her resolve hardening. "Unless you've got something more than stereotypes, I suggest you let him be." The sheriff's nostrils flared. "You're making a mistake, Alicia. People don't support those who stand with criminals." "Then they're not people I want in my life." A thick silence followed. Brennan, red-faced, muttered, "You'll regret this," before storming out. The door slammed behind him, echoing like a warning. Marcus looked at Alicia with something like awe. "Thank you," he said. "Most wouldn't have done that." "I'm not most," she replied. But deep inside she feared Brennan was right. And the town would soon make her pay for that choice. The next morning in Red Valley dawned gray and uneasy. The mist hung low across Main Street like the breath of a town holding its guilt. Alicia stood alone behind the counter, pouring herself a cup of coffee she wouldn't drink. Sleep had been a stranger last night. Her dreams were filled with the sheriff's threats, with Marcus' sorrowful eyes, and with the sinking feeling of a storm gathering just beyond the horizon. By 9 a.m. she knew something was wrong. Normally, even on slow days, a handful of locals would drift in for their usual orders. Dorothy Watson for toast and tea, the Hill couple for their twin stacks of pancakes, Mr. Langford for black coffee and bacon crisp enough to break teeth. But today nothing. The streets outside her window were barren. The diner was a vacuum of sound, save for the hum of the fridge and the tick of the old wall clock. Time, it seemed, was trying to remind her that things were already shifting. At 10:17 she checked her phone. No messages. No orders. Nothing. Then her stomach dropped. Painted across the front window of her diner, in thick red scrawl, were the words, "Don't serve bikers. Get out." She stared at it, frozen. For a moment she couldn't move. It wasn't just vandalism. It was a verdict, a warning, a sentence. Her hands trembled as she grabbed a rag and a bucket of soapy water. Each stroke of the cloth erased the words from the glass, but not from her memory. That kind of hate leaves scars that outlast paint. As the glass cleared, her reflection met her eyes. She looked tired. But something in her face had changed, something defiant, something ancestral. She thought of her father, of his steady hands flipping pancakes and his unwavering belief that dignity wasn't something the world gave you, it was something you carried, no matter how heavy. The bell above the door jingled at noon, and Alicia turned with a jolt of hope. But it wasn't a customer. It was Deputy Tyler Collins, hands in his pockets, guilt swimming in his boyish face. "Alicia," he said softly, I'm sorry." She said nothing at first, just stared. "I didn't know Brennan would take it this far," Tyler continued, voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't sign up to harass people. I thought I was keeping peace." "Peace?" Alicia said quietly, wiping her hands on a towel. "You call what's happening out there peace?" He looked at the floor, shamed. "Sheriff Brennan controls this town," he mumbled. "Everyone's scared. Even me." "And that's exactly the problem," Alicia replied. "Fear lets people do terrible things. Fear is how injustice thrives." Tyler nodded. "I wanted to tell you. I think Brennan's planning something worse. He's angry." Alicia, embarrassed. "He won't just let this go." Her breath caught. "Like what?" "I don't know exactly. But I heard him on the phone last night. He was talking about shutting you down. Health inspections. Zoning violations. Whatever he can dig up. He said if Red Valley won't push you out, he will." The room tilted for a moment as her heart kicked into overdrive. But Alicia didn't flinch. "Let him come," she said coldly. "He'll see what standing alone really looks like." Tyler looked at her with something like admiration, then fear. "Just be careful." And with that he left. Another soul lost in the sheriff's long shadow. Alicia stood alone again, this time surrounded not by silence but by quiet rage. She didn't know how much longer she could keep the diner open. Her electricity bill was overdue. Her fridge compressor was making a sound she couldn't afford to fix. And now her own neighbors, people who'd grown up beside her, were treating her like she didn't belong. She made herself a sandwich she couldn't finish. Stared at her father's photo for comfort. Then at 4:12 p.m. the doorbell jingled again. This time it wasn't someone from town. It was a man and a woman. Strangers, but with a familiar look. Biker leathers, sun-scarred skin, the Hells Angels emblem stitched on their jackets. They approached quietly, respectfully. "Excuse me," the man said. "Are you Alicia Bennett?" "I am," she replied cautiously. "I'm Thomas Reed," he said, offering a hand. "This is my wife, Sarah. Marcus is my brother." Alicia's throat tightened. "Is Emily?" "She's holding on," Sarah said gently. "Barely. But Marcus told us everything. What you did. What you said. How you stood up for him when no one else would." Thomas continued, "We just came to say thank you. In person. Because not many people would do what you did. And we don't forget people who help our family." Alicia was silent for a moment, her emotions caught somewhere between gratitude and disbelief. "I only did what was right. And that's why we're here," Sarah said. "Marcus said he wouldn't have made it back to Emily's bedside if you hadn't reminded him that there are still good people in the world." Then Thomas stepped closer, his tone shifting, firmer now. Protective. "You've got enemies in this town, Alicia. We've seen this kind of thing before. But you're not alone anymore." "What do you mean?" she asked. "You'll see," he said with a faint smile. "Tomorrow." He tipped his head, then turned with his wife and left. That night, Alicia sat in her empty diner, unable to shake their words. The next morning would bring something. She just didn't know what. But somehow, for the first time in days, she wasn't afraid. Outside, the moon rose high and full, casting light on the newly cleaned windows. Behind the glass stood a woman determined not to break. Morning came with a strange stillness, as if the town itself were holding its breath. Alicia stood in front of the diner just after dawn, mug of coffee in hand, her eyes scanning the empty road. The air smelled like rain, though the sky was clear. She couldn't explain it, but something felt different. Her conversation with Thomas and Sarah the day before had planted a seed of anticipation inside her, and despite everything, Brennan's threats, the cold stares from townsfolk, the vandalism, there was a sliver of hope that refused to die. She unlocked the door and turned on the lights. The fluorescent buzz filled the space that had lately only known silence. As she prepped the kitchen and wiped down the counters, she found herself humming, something she hadn't done in weeks. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe today would be like every other recent day, empty, lonely, quiet. But maybe, just maybe it wouldn't be. Then she heard it. A low, deep rumble in the distance, like thunder but not from the sky. Her chest tightened. She stepped outside and shielded her eyes against the sun. What she saw made her heart stop. Motorcycles. Dozens of them. No, hundreds. Alicia's jaw dropped. They came down Main Street like a tidal wave of chrome and leather. Row after row of riders on gleaming Harleys rolled in, their engines harmonizing into a thunderous roar that shook the very bones of Red Valley. They weren't just Hell's Angels, they were the Hell's Angels. And they weren't here for intimidation. They were here for her. She stood frozen on the sidewalk as Thomas Reed led the pack, his face calm but resolute. Behind him rode men and women of all ages, their expressions unified in purpose. They parked with precision, lining the street in front of Alicia's diner. As the engines went silent, the town's silence grew louder. Curtains twitched. Doors creaked open. Residents peeked out, their curiosity and unease palpable. Sheriff Brennan emerged from the police station, his arms crossed tightly across his chest, his jaw clenched. Thomas approached Alicia first, his presence commanding but warm. He removed his helmet and spoke just loud enough for those gathering nearby to hear. "We didn't want to scare you, Alicia. But we couldn't let you face this alone. You helped one of us, and now all of us are here for you." She was stunned. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "We're here to eat." And just like that, they started filing into the diner. One by one, leather-clad bikers took seats at booths and stools. They ordered everything: eggs, pancakes, coffee, biscuits, bacon. Some paid twice the bill. Some slipped cash into the tip jar with quiet reverence. No one raised their voice. No one stirred trouble. Outside, the townspeople gathered, drawn by the spectacle. Whispers passed through the crowd like wildfire. "That's Alicia's diner." She stood up to the sheriff. "Those bikers are here, for her?" Brennan watched, fury burning behind his eyes. He stormed across the street, his boots pounding the pavement like war drums. The crowd parted around him and he marched straight up to Thomas. "You think you can march into my town and cause a scene?" Brennan snapped. Thomas didn't flinch. "Your town? Funny, I thought it belonged to everyone who lives here. This isn't some rally. You don't get to grandstand in." "We're not here to grandstand," Thomas interrupted, calm and collected. "We're here because this woman stood up for what was right. She defended my brother when your badge was used to intimidate, not protect." Brennan's face turned crimson. "You don't belong here." Alicia stepped forward. "Neither did you when you barged into my diner without cause, Sheriff." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Brennan turned to her, his voice low and dangerous. "You really think this circus is going to change anything?" "No," Alicia replied. "But kindness will. And truth will. And sooner or later, people are going to see the difference between fear and justice." For a moment, Brennan looked like he might explode. But with dozens of bikers behind Alicia and half the town watching, he did something unexpected. He turned and walked away. As he disappeared down the street, the crowd began to move closer, not in fear but in curiosity. Some locals approached the bikers, asking questions, shaking hands. The dividing lines in Red Valley had started to blur. Inside, Alicia moved from table to table, overwhelmed by orders, overwhelmed by emotion. For the first time in weeks, the diner buzzed with life. Coffee steamed. Plates clinked. Laughter rose from the booths like music. Thomas found a quiet moment to pull her aside. You did this, he said. You sparked all of this. Alicia looked around, her eyes misty. I just served coffee and stood up for a man who needed it. Exactly, Thomas said. And that's what real leadership looks like. But deep inside, Alicia knew this wasn't over. She could feel the storm still brewing in Brennan's eyes. She could feel the tension thickening, pressing down on the town like humid summer air before a downpour. She was no longer alone. But being surrounded by allies meant more was at stake than ever before. By the time the last biker left that afternoon, Alicia's diner had sold out of everything: eggs, bacon, biscuits, even the emergency frozen hash browns she kept in the back just in case. The tip jar overflowed. The register for the first time in over a year was full. But more than that, Alicia felt something she hadn't felt since her father fell ill. Pride. Not pride in herself alone, but in the power of human decency. In what could happen when people chose empathy over fear. As she wiped down the counter, her hands trembled from exhaustion, but her heart was steady. Until she looked up and saw him. Sheriff Brennan. Standing across the street. Watching. He wasn't wearing his usual smug grin or barking orders at passers-by. He was still. Quiet. And in that stillness, Alicia saw something more dangerous than anger: calculation. He wasn't finished. And neither was she. The next morning, Alicia arrived early to clean and restock, only to find an envelope taped to the diner's door. It was from the Red Valley Health Department. Notice of inspection. She stared at the seal, her chest tightening. An inspection. On the heels of a biker rally? Coincidence? Not likely. By 10 a.m., 2 men in county uniforms arrived, clipboards in hand, walking the floor with exaggerated scrutiny. One of them even ran a finger along the baseboards, frowning. You repainted recently? He asked. No, Alicia replied. I've had other priorities. Might be an issue. Non-compliant lead paint chipping could be a hazard. They took pictures. Jotted notes. Tested the temperature on the fridge. Shined flashlights behind the stove. The entire process took over 2 hours, and when it ended, they handed her a pink carbon copy report. Temporary suspension pending review. The words stared back at her like a punch to the gut. Alicia didn't cry. She didn't scream. But inside, the part of her that had dared to hope, dared to believe change was coming, shuddered. Outside, people were beginning to gather again. Some curious, some concerned. But most stood back, watching from a distance, as if afraid her courage might rub off and make them a target too. Then she saw him again, Deputy Tyler Collins. He wasn't in uniform. Just jeans and a t-shirt. But the guilt on his face was unmistakable. You knew, Alicia said as he approached. He nodded slowly. I told you. He was planning something. And you didn't stop it. I tried, Tyler said quietly. I spoke up in front of Brennan yesterday. He shut me down. Threatened to suspend me for insubordination. Said if I wanted to keep wearing the badge, I'd better learn to follow his lead. And you're still here, Alicia said, more disappointed than angry. He looked at the ground. I thought I could help from the inside. But I don't think I can anymore. A long silence stretched between them. Then he handed her a folded slip of paper. What's this? Evidence, Tyler said. From the sheriff's office. Emails. Call logs. Proof that Brennan ordered the inspection himself, even though the diner passed its last review 2 months ago. Alicia's eyes widened. This could get him removed. It's a start, Tyler said. But he's not going to go down quietly. I think he's got something worse planned. Worse than shutting down the only black-owned business in town? Yes, Tyler said grimly. He wants to make an example of you. That evening, Alicia sat alone in the diner, the lights off, the silence oppressive. The closed sign hung heavy in the window. Outside, Red Valley was unusually quiet, as if the town sensed a reckoning on the horizon. She thought about her father. About everything he built. About the photo on the wall of him flipping pancakes, beaming in his apron, smiling like he owned the world. I'm trying, Dad, she whispered. I'm still trying. A knock on the door startled her. She turned to see Marcus Reed, tired, road-worn but smiling, standing outside. She opened the door. Marcus? What are you doing here? I came to say thank you, he said, holding out a worn envelope. For everything you did. And to tell you, Emily's stable. Her counts are up. Her doctors think she might actually make it. Alicia gasped. Marcus, that's a miracle. He nodded, eyes misty. I believe in miracles now. And I believe in you. Because if you hadn't stood up for me, I wouldn't have made it back in time to hold her hand. She opened the envelope. Inside was a check. A very large check. "Marcus, I can't take this." "You're not taking it. You earned it," he interrupted. Thomas and the others all chipped in. "You kept this place standing when the whole town tried to knock it down. It's our turn to return the favor." Tears welled in Alicia's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. But the diner still shut down. "Brennan, he had me inspected. Shut me down on technicalities." Marcus' face darkened. "Then maybe it's time we fight back, together?" Alicia looked around her dark, quiet diner. The place that had been her father's dream. Her home. Her last stand. She wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and nodded. "We're not going down. Not like this." The war for Red Valley's soul wasn't over. But Alicia Bennett had just found her army. Word spread fast in Red Valley, faster than anyone could have anticipated. By sunrise the next day, whispers danced through church pews and hardware stores, bounced off grocery aisles and cafe counters. People were talking about Alicia again. But this time, it wasn't with quiet disdain or veiled judgment. It was with awe. Because somehow, despite Brennan's best efforts, Alicia Bennett had reopened her diner. No official letter. No legal approval. Just the soft clink of plates on tables, the warm smell of butter and coffee in the air, and the open sign flipped defiantly back to welcome. The lights were on. The griddle was hot. And Alicia was standing behind the counter, head high, eyes steady, as if daring anyone to stop her. She knew it was risky. But after Tyler's leak and Marcus' donation, she'd had enough. Enough of hiding. Enough of waiting. She wasn't breaking the law. She was refusing to be crushed under the weight of one man's corruption. And she wasn't alone. By mid-morning, bikers began rolling in again, not in the hundreds this time but in steady waves. Friends. Allies. Locals who'd seen the video Thomas uploaded the night before of Alicia's standoff with the sheriff and the sudden wave of support that followed. The comments section had exploded with words like hero, courage, standing for what's right. People weren't just watching. They were coming. An elderly couple from the next county pulled up in a dusty sedan just before noon. "Are you Alicia?" the woman asked, her voice shaking. "Yes," Alicia answered. "We saw your story online," the man added. "We just wanted to have lunch and say thank you." By 1 p.m., every table was full. And outside? Red Valley's own residents, some who had once turned their backs, stood hesitantly at the curb. Watching. Thinking. Some even crossed the threshold. "Just coffee," Dorothy Watson mumbled as she slid into a booth. "And maybe a scone." Alicia smiled. "Coming right up." But it wasn't all good news. At precisely 2:15 p.m., the glass door creaked open once again, and in walked Sheriff Brennan. He wore his badge like a weapon, his boots like a threat. His face was tight, and in his hand he held a fresh legal document. A new shutdown order. "Alicia Bennett," he announced loud enough for everyone to hear, "you are in violation of a formal suspension. You are ordered to cease operation immediately or face legal consequences." The diner fell silent. Alicia didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped out from behind the counter, holding her head higher than ever. "You've made your point, Sheriff. You don't like that I stood up to you. You don't like that people are watching now. But this diner, isn't just a building. It's not just mine. It belongs to this community." He sneered. "The law doesn't care about your speeches." "No," came a deep voice behind him, "but it does care about forged orders." All heads turned. Deputy Tyler Collins stepped into the diner, not in uniform, but carrying a box full of printed emails, audio files and documentation. "Evidence." He handed the stack to Thomas, who held it up for all to see. "These are records proving that Sheriff Brennan orchestrated an unlawful inspection, falsified reports, and targeted Alicia Bennett based on personal bias," Thomas declared. "And we've already submitted them to the County Oversight Committee." Brennan's face drained of color. "You little snake." "Save it," Tyler said firmly. "You crossed the line, Sheriff. This isn't about order anymore. This is about control. And we're done being afraid of you." Gasps spread like wildfire through the diner. The townspeople, the bikers, the once skeptics, everyone was watching. Everyone was deciding. Alicia took a step forward. "I told you before, I wasn't going to back down. And now, I'm not the only one." Brennan's mouth opened, then shut. The old threat in his posture vanished as he realized something chilling. His power was slipping and no badge could bring it back. He turned without a word and walked out, his boots sounding more like retreat than dominance. A moment passed. Then applause. It started with one biker, then a local, then another, until the whole diner rang with the sound of a community rediscovering its voice. Alicia looked around and saw something blooming in that moment, something rare and powerful. Not just victory. Belief. They believed in her. And more importantly, they believed in themselves, in their ability to reject fear and embrace fairness. Later that night, as the crowd thinned and the hum of life settled into soft chatter and clinking mugs, Marcus joined Alicia at the counter. He looked tired but lighter, like a man no longer carrying the full weight of the world on his shoulders. "How's Emily?" she asked. "She's laughing again," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "And she wants to meet you. Keeps calling you, the brave lady from the diner." Alicia smiled, tears threatening. "Tell her I'll come soon." "I'd like that." He nodded. "And Alicia?" "Yeah. You didn't just protect me. You reminded this whole town what it means to stand up when it counts." She looked around the diner, alive, buzzing, whole again, and took a deep breath. "Good," she said. "Because this was never about just one person. It never is." By the next morning, Red Valley wasn't just buzzing, it was transformed. The diner that had once stood as a quiet relic of the past now pulsed like the heart of something new. People didn't just come for food anymore. They came for meaning. For a sense of belonging. For a glimpse of what it looked like when someone said, "Enough," and actually meant it. Alicia's story had gone viral. Thomas's video, a simple recording of Alicia confronting Sheriff Brennan and the solidarity that followed, had spread across social media like wildfire. Comments poured in by the thousands. Journalists called. Influencers reposted it. Messages arrived from strangers across the country. "You gave me hope," one woman wrote. "I showed this to my daughter," another shared. "Now she wants to be brave like you." But amid the praise, Alicia stayed grounded. Because she knew this wasn't over. And sure enough, while the town celebrated and the news crews scheduled interviews, Sheriff Brennan disappeared. No public statement. No explanation. Just silence. Until the fire. It happened 2 nights later. At 2:37 a.m., Alicia awoke to the shriek of sirens and the sharp scent of smoke curling through her bedroom window. She bolted upright, heart hammering, adrenaline already taking over. She didn't need to check her phone or watch the news. She knew. She threw on her coat and sprinted outside. But it wasn't her diner. It was Tyler's house. Flames chewed through the front porch. Firefighters battled the blaze with frantic urgency. Neighbors stood nearby, many in pajamas and slippers, horror etched across their faces. And standing a few feet away, ash on his cheeks and shaking with rage, was Tyler Collins. "Alicia," he called when he saw her. It wasn't an accident. It was arson. She froze. "Brennan? I can't prove it yet. But yes, this was a warning." Her heart dropped. "Is your family?" "They're safe. We got out in time. But this is what power looks like when it's cornered. It burns everything in sight." Alicia stepped forward and took his hand. "We'll expose this," she said. "Together." The next morning, the town awoke not to victory, but to reckoning. Local news channels replayed the footage of the fire. Photos of Tyler's scorched home were splashed across front pages and social feeds. But even more powerful than the images was the growing chorus of voices demanding answers. And at the center of it all, Alicia. She stood outside her diner that morning flanked by Marcus, Thomas, Sarah, and even townspeople who had once quietly walked past her. Dorothy Watson, Dave and Sarah Hill, Mr. Langford. People who now stood not with curiosity but conviction. The press had arrived too, cameras capturing every word as Alicia faced the microphones. "What happened to Tyler and his family is a tragedy," she began. "But what's worse is that we all know it wasn't random. This wasn't just a fire. It was a threat. A message to every person who's ever dared to speak up against corruption and cruelty." She took a breath. Her voice was calm, firm. "Well, here's my message." She turned to the cameras. "You will not scare us. You will not bully us. You will not burn away our belief in what's right. Red Valley is done being afraid." Cheers erupted behind her. Marcus squeezed her shoulder. Thomas raised his fist. And somewhere, watching on a screen or from the shadows, Sheriff Brennan knew. His control had cracked wide open. But Alicia wasn't finished. "Sheriff Brennan," she said clearly, "we are calling on you to resign. Not just for what happened to me. Not just for what you did to Marcus. But for abusing your power, for punishing the innocent, and for turning our town into your personal kingdom of fear. We want accountability. We want justice. And if you don't step down, we'll remove you ourselves." The crowd exploded into applause. It wasn't just bikers or the brave few anymore. It was everyone. A community that had once been silent now stood as one. And just like that, Alicia became more than the owner of a diner. She became the voice of Red Valley. That afternoon, Thomas made another video. This one was different. It wasn't just a story. It was a rallying cry. Red Valley is changing, he said. And it's because of one woman's courage. Alicia stood up when it mattered most. Now it's our turn. In the following days, signatures poured in, thousands from across the county. A formal petition to remove Sheriff Brennan from office. Even state officials took notice. But Alicia didn't get caught up in politics. She stayed in her lane. Literally. Serving food. Wiping down counters. Pouring coffee. Because to her this wasn't about fame. It was about home. About her father's legacy. About a little town rediscovering its soul. Late one evening she sat beside her father again at the nursing home. The TV was on in the corner, playing a rerun of the very news broadcast that had just featured her face. She held his hand and smiled. "Dad," she whispered, "you always said real strength isn't loud. It's in the quiet choices. In doing the right thing when no one's looking." Well, turns out people were looking. And now they're standing with us. His eyes fluttered, tired but open. His fingers twitched slightly in hers. And for just a moment she thought she saw the faintest hint of a smile. The battle wasn't over. But the tide had turned. Red Valley was never the same after that final week. 4 years, it had been a town wrapped in silence. Silent injustice, silent fear, silent compliance. But now, every corner echoed with voices that had once whispered but now shouted for change. And at the center of it all was Alicia Bennett. It began with a town hall meeting, an emergency session hastily arranged in response to the avalanche of signatures calling for Sheriff Brennan's resignation. The old courthouse, once sparsely visited, was filled to capacity. Even the aisles were crowded with people holding signs, holding hands and holding each other accountable. Alicia sat quietly in the front row beside Thomas, Marcus and Tyler, her expression composed but unwavering. She didn't speak first. She didn't need to. The town spoke for her. "I never said anything when Brennan closed my cousin's shop for no reason," a woman stood up and admitted. "I was afraid. But not anymore. Alicia showed us how to be brave." "I believed the worst about Marcus because of what I heard, not what I knew," Mr. Langford added, standing beside his wife. "But Alicia reminded me that respect has nothing to do with jackets or patches. It has to do with actions." Even Dorothy Watson stood. She looked out over the room, her frail hands clutching the back of a pew. "I was wrong. I turned away from a neighbor. From family. But Alicia brought us back together. And I won't stay quiet anymore." When Alicia finally rose, a hush swept the room. "I didn't stand up to be a hero," she said softly. "I stood up because I couldn't sleep knowing I stayed quiet. And now, none of us have to stay quiet anymore. We're not powerless. We never were. We just forgot." The final motion to remove Brennan was read aloud. And then the vote. It wasn't close. Unanimous. Brennan was done. The once feared sheriff didn't even attend. His resignation letter arrived that morning, delivered by an aide with trembling hands. He'd skipped town under the cover of night, leaving behind a legacy in ruins, and a community reborn in its defiance. Tyler Collins was appointed interim sheriff by the Oversight Committee, and with the support of the town he pledged reforms, transparency, and a department driven by empathy, not ego. But Alicia? She returned to the diner. That's where the real rebuilding began. Business boomed. Not just because of media attention, but because people believed in the place now. It had become a symbol. Of justice. Of community. Of second chances. Emily, Marcus's daughter, recovered steadily. Doctors called it miraculous. But Alicia knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was hope. Real hope, nourished by human kindness and fierce loyalty. Alicia finally met Emily one crisp autumn morning when Marcus brought her to the diner. The girl, frail but smiling, hugged Alicia tight around the waist. "Daddy said you're why I'm still here," Emily whispered. Alicia bent down, tears already welling. "No, sweetheart. You're the brave one. I just made coffee and spoke the truth." A week later, the Hells Angels hosted a massive charity ride through the town. Riders from across the state descended on Red Valley not in defiance, but in celebration. The funds raised went toward rebuilding Tyler's home and creating a scholarship fund in James Bennett's name, for students committed to justice and community service. James never spoke again, but Alicia believed he understood. And one evening, as she sat with him under the fading glow of a hospital window, she took his hand and whispered, "We did it, Dad. We really did." He blinked slowly. Tears slipped silently from her eyes. Back at the diner, Alicia added something new to the wall beside her father's old photograph. A framed vest, Hell's Angels insignia stitched proudly on the back, with the words embroidered below. "We protect our own." Thomas gifted it to her that morning, grinning as he nailed it in place. "Now you're really one of us." But Alicia knew she always had been. Because being one of them never meant riding a bike or wearing leather. It meant showing up. Standing tall. Fighting for those who had no one else. As the seasons changed and tourists still trickled in to see the diner that changed a town, Alicia kept cooking, serving, listening. She turned away interviews from national networks. She declined offers to franchise the business. "I don't want to build an empire," she told a reporter once. "I just want to make people feel like they belong. Like they matter." And she had. In one tiny corner of America, Alicia Bennett had taken a matchstick of kindness and lit a fire strong enough to burn away years of silence. Not all stories need capes or crowds. Some just need a woman in an apron, a few cups of strong coffee, and the courage to say, "No more." Alicia's story is a powerful reminder that true change doesn't begin in the headlines. It begins in the quiet courage of everyday people. Her stand against injustice sparked a movement, healed a town, and proved that even in the darkest places, light can break through if someone dares to strike the match. As Alicia once said, real strength isn't loud. It's in the quiet choices. In doing the right thing when no one's looking. This story moved you? Share it. Tell someone who needs to remember that courage is contagious. Comment below with how this story inspired you, and don't forget to subscribe to True Echo for more real-life tales that stir the soul and spark change.